to a peon, kind of time we on. Jump roll like the kind of take eons. Got a little buzz, it's time to go beyond. Can't look back, no time to hit rewind. Yeah, she wants to do S class. I'm like, boo, you must ask. They pour way too much in your glass. Just move your hips like a hold up class. Get the gab, I talk that gab. Strut like up and I walk that shit. When I'm up, that's it. I'ma start living reckless. Get that bag, I'ma walk like this. Yeah, I'ma walk like this.
Welcome back to the Authentic Walk podcast, hosted by Tanner Morgan and Daventry Jordan, where we really just talk about allowing God and others to see the real you. And we've got a very special guest today, 13-year NFL vet. We could talk about all the teams that he's played for, all the quarterbacks and amazing offensive coordinators that he's been with and head coaches. But more importantly, Luke's an excellent preacher, and even more important than that, a man of God. And we're really excited to have him on here, talk a little bit of ball, but also just talk faith and kind of his experiences. Mm-hmm. Luke, appreciate you coming on and being with us. Our very first virtual interview. And we had a little troubles. We were going to go on Riverside, but Riverside crashed on us, so we're on Zoom. So shout out to Influence Pro Marketing for having to edit the Zoom instead of Riverside. So I know they're going to have fun with that. But we're excited to have you here and have a little conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys.
Yeah, so you kind of had – one thing I want to ask you before we get into some other stuff is your recruiting story is a lot different than – what we see nowadays in the portal and the NIL landscape, the Rivals 247. You were a really highly recruited guy. I think, in some newspapers and articles and whatnot, you were the number 2 ranked quarterback in the country, right?
Depending on the publication, right? Depending on who you talk to or whatever, Rivals, Blue Chip, whatever. I was anywhere from 8 to 2. And so I always tell people I was number 2.
yeah, as you should. I love it.
As you should, right? So it was myself and Brock Berlin. Brock played at Evangel Christian in Shreveport, went to Florida initially, ended up playing a couple of years at Miami. It was a little unconventional in that, I kind of indirectly been through the recruiting process. My oldest brother, Randy, was the number 1 recruit. Dave Campbell's, which is a big, high school football magazine in Texas. He was a super team quarterback there in 95, 94, 95, whatever years, the senior year. And ended up going to Texas A&M, which was at that time was, that win and kind of the wrecking crew defense and kind of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But they were national championship contenders every year. And Randy redshirted and kind of sat for a couple of years, ended up being a 2.5-year starter at Texas A&M, had a great career. Josh wasn't as highly recruited because he only played 1 year. He only got to play his senior year in high school, and but was a strong recruit in Texas. Ended up going to SMU, and started as a true freshman, and played 3 years with 3 different coordinators and 2 different head coaches, and ended up transferring before his senior year to Sam Houston State. Had a great year, and 3rd round pick to the Cardinals. So I was, in this position of like, okay, what, small school that's kind of up and coming, like SMU was trying to rebound off of, they were on probation for a while for some recruiting violations and stuff like that. So they were trying to rebound and regrow. Josh really wanted to be a part of kind of rebranding that school a little bit, that athletic department. Randy went to something that was more traditional. Kind of this, hey, I'm going to go compete for a national championship, atmosphere. And so I got to sit back and look at it and go, what game am I playing? And, obviously nobody ever enters, I don't think, for the most part, enters college football with, I'm only going to play 4 years in college and then I'm going to hang them up. Like, there's always a drive. Like, I'd like to go play in the NFL. I'd like to go, get a shot to play at the highest level. And so that was all of us 3. Is we just kind of grew into it. Growing up, that's what I wanted to do, was play NFL football, like since 2nd grade. And so, when I sat down and started praying through schools, I mean, Florida State, Oklahoma, Miami. Butch Davis recruited me to the University of Miami when they were having like 10 guys drafted in the first round every year in the early 2000s. I mean, it was pretty crazy. You know, so my final two was Oklahoma and Louisiana Tech. And people go, what? Like, like Oklahoma, like not like Oklahoma Baptist, but like Oklahoma. You know? And it's like, yeah, you know, that's my final two. And they're like, how in the world did you choose Louisiana Tech? So, well, you know, number one, I put a lot of prayer into it, and I felt like that's where I was supposed to be. Felt like in my heart, like that's where God wanted me to go. And that was enough for me. But, you know, not only that, but they had won, you know, 8 and 9 games in a row. Previous 2 seasons, they had beat teams like Alabama, you know, previously, like the year before, had a couple of kind of signature wins for a small program at that time. And so, and they threw the ball a lot. So I watched Randy go to a school that was handed off on first and second down, throw it on third down, handed off first and second down, throw it on third down. Right. And I watched Josh go to a school that really didn't have an identity. They had a new coordinator every year. And so when I picked their brains about it, they were like, hey, go somewhere where you can throw the ball, you know. And so Louisiana Tech kind of had, they were, you know, air raid, spread it out, you know, at the beginning of all of it. Tim Rattay was lighting people up, 520 yards against Nebraska. Troy Edwards had 420 of that or something like that.
Jeez.
Some ridiculous amount of yards catching. And so they knew how to do that. And the other aspect of that is that, you know, Oklahoma wanted me to come in and compete. They had Josh Heupel was there, a senior, or had just graduated. I think just graduated. So they wanted me to come in and compete. And I was 6'3" and 175 pounds, sopping wet. I mean, I needed some time to develop, you know, and grow a little bit. And Louisiana Tech had a guy that was going to be a senior and had played a little bit the year before, and so they felt confident that I could redshirt and then compete as a redshirt freshman. So okay, all of that lines up, and on top of the fact that I think going in and doing what I do as a quarterback, right? I throw the ball. That's going to give me the best chance to play the long game, you know, not just for 3 or 4 years. I'm trying to go somewhere for a long time. I'm trying to play quarterback for a long time. And so I ended up going to Louisiana Tech. I redshirted my first 3 years, my first 3 games, and halftime of the third game, starter goes down the week before. Starter goes down, so backup finishes that game and plays the first half of the third game. They come to me at halftime and go, "Hey, yeah, I mean it's up to you, but we need you to play. And if you're ready to go, we want you to. We'll pull your red shirt right here." So I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know? So,
can you do me a favor? I'm sorry to interrupt you. But we were just talking about being ready for that moment. Like, how did you know that God prepared you for that moment?
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, because we opened up. I think we opened up with Penn State that year. And got just our eyes beat out. We were up there and just got blown out. And I remember walking into that stadium. Coach Paterno, their staff. Now, I don't think they ever formally offered me a scholarship because I made it pretty clear I was going to stay at least reasonably close to home. But I remember walking into that stadium and going, I belong here. Like, those guys over there recruited me. They believe I was good enough to play. And so regardless of what anybody else ever thinks, I should be here. And if they thought I was good enough to play for them, then I'm definitely good enough to play against them. Mm-hmm. And so when it was Tulsa, you know, and I'm not throwing any shade, we ended up losing that game, but at halftime against Tulsa, you know, I was like, yeah, let's go. But I've always been a very confident person. I've always, you know, God wired me that way. Like part of it is because being a number 3 boy, I was always like, well, Josh and Randy couldn't do it, I can do it. do it, and I can do it better. Just give me a chance.
Yeah.
Right. So that was just kind of always my mentality, and so there was no fear. It wasn't worried about going out and doing bad or anything like that. It was just, I'm gonna go play football. This is what I wanted to do anyways. So I ended up starting 44 straight games in college, and fourth round pick, to the Cleveland Browns. Actually, Butch Davis was the head coach in Cleveland when I got drafted in 2004, and his first question to me at the combine was, "Dude, I was in your field house, offered you a scholarship, and you went to Louisiana Tech. Like, why'd you do that?" And so it was a great conversation. But I had this conversation. Actually, Brad and I, Stanfield and I, had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the portal and how quarterbacks and NIL money and all this different stuff. And I made the comment that one of these days, I don't know who or when, but one of these days, there's going to be a highly touted quarterback, 4-star, 5-star, whatever, and he's going to shun all the other Clemson's, A&M's, Baylor's, he's Oregon's, and he's going to go small school, and he's going to light it up. He's going to absolutely light it up. And they'll build a statue outside the state. He'll be, inducted into their Hall of Fame the first year when he gets through playing, and he'll go play a long time in the NFL. And that same kid who was a 4 and 5-star, there might only be 2 or 3 other 4 or 5 stars that go to the NFL, maybe, right? And because the way the portal is now, you go to the Ohio States, you go to the Alabamas, you got 4 other 4 and 5-star guys. And that's not to say that you don't believe you're better than them and can go beat them out, right? And that's what you should believe. But playing is the most important thing. Like the opportunity to go out and play and put your stamp on a game. And I don't know, being strategic with where you go. Obviously, you want to be on national television. You want to play against top opponents. Like a lot of my best games were against the U's and against Penn States and Kansas States. And, we beat Michigan State up there when I was a senior. We beat Oklahoma State at home when I was a junior. And so, and those were 2 top 10 teams by the end of the season. And so it matters who you play, obviously, but playing is the most important thing.
Right.
So if I'm a 4-star guy and I go to an Alabama or I go to a Clemson or I go to a Texas or whatever, and I don't get to play, I go in the portal, that automatically is a minus to me as far as my growth and development. It just is. So there's going to be at some point, a kid, and the hard part of it is the money, right? Yeah. The NIL money, top 10, top echelon, Power 5 high school quarterback recruits, like the starting point's like $500K.
Man, that could have been you if you would have just,
Yeah, true.
I made $500K until like my 3rd year in the NFL. So it was crazy. But but who's going to look at it and go, I'm playing for the long game? Because at some point, 3 years, that NIL money runs out. You're done with school. And they're not still paying you because you were a high recruit at a school anymore. But if I go play at a small school and my vision is for the long game, I might get to play 10, 12, 13 years in the NFL. And that money lasts a lot longer than 3 years, 2 years NIL money.
Yeah, I think what'll be interesting is whenever you get that guy who decides that, I'm going to go to a MAC school or I'm going to go to a Sunbelt school instead of going to the ACC Big Ten because I want to play and maybe I grew up a fan of this team and I play for this team and they go out and have a great freshman year. Yeah. What calls come in and, this is all questions. Are you going to be able to stay? And maybe be able to resist the money or, a better and maybe sexier opportunity to stay with your teammates at the current school that you're at and a G5 or whatever it is, or transfer out because in the portal, these top programs, they're looking for guys who are proven and who have done it on tape because their job depends on, if you're an offensive coordinator or a quarterback coach, your livelihood is largely dependent on how well the quarterback plays.
No question.
And that's hard for a lot of people to understand is, especially these younger quarterbacks, and it's not on them to bear, right? But how well they play from a coach's perspective.
Yeah.
Like I could either get a promotion or get fired.
Yeah.
Based on how my quarterback plays, which is just the nature of the business. And now you got the quarterbacks who are making, at some schools, almost as much as these coordinators.
Yeah.
And they're not in the NFL. They're 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And they know, like, okay, we're both making money here. And that dynamic's changed where it's more of an NFL model. And even more so, like the scheme is changing a little bit in college football with helmet communication. Now it's everyone's watching in the offseason. They're watching the Shanahan tree. They're watching the Rams, the Niners, what Brock Purdy did, and they want to replicate, that kind of offense, which I think is good for college football.
Oh, it's great for college football.
Yeah, but it's going to be really interesting with this, hypothetical situation we're talking about is if a kid goes out and balls out, let's say he throws 35 touchdowns and 3K, wins 10 games, are you going to stay at the G5 or transfer up to get more money? And because money talks, and it's being thrown around.
If you look
right
at
now.
Luke, look at his story. Like, he knew who he was. He was confident in his faith. He was confident what God put inside of him, and he just steps of a righteous man, ordered by the Lord, and you just follow.
And what I find fascinating too is usually if you're explaining the situation to somebody, Oklahoma or Louisiana Tech. And Louisiana Tech's had a history of a lot of great quarterbacks, and Oklahoma certainly has as well. Is, if you were saying, at Louisiana Tech I was going to go in, they promised me to be the starter right away. That was the spot because I wanted to play early. No, it was flipped. Louisiana Tech, you're like, I needed to be developed, where now kids are like, I want the quickest opportunity to play, even if I know I'm not ready. Where, I think that's a different mindset. So I think that's fascinating.
But the key thing is he prayed about it.
Yeah.
He sat and he prayed and he was still.
No question.
And God gave him an answer.
So when you, when you were in that situation, and I didn't plan on sitting here this long, but I think it's a fascinating conversation. When you said, all right, no, I really feel like the Lord is pulling me into this direction at Louisiana Tech, how did you handle, or what were, the answers from people in your life that said, really, Louisiana Tech? Maybe people at your high school, people that were close to you, but you're not even going to get to play there. But it was no, I know God's calling me here. This is where I'm going to go. And obviously it worked out for you. But what was that situation like?
Met my wife there. And so, worked out extremely well. So two things about that, I think. My friend group in high school and the people that I kind of hang with and, play ball with, my coaches, certainly my family. I was always a kid that just kind of no nonsense. I didn't dabble in the parties and stuff like that. My buddies would go out even in high school. We're small town Texas, so kind of the back roads drinking, stuff like that. That's a real thing, and so that just wasn't me. It never was, and I never had any problems looking my guys in the face and going, no, I'm good. Y'all go do what you do. Be careful, but I'm good. There was never a moment of pressure that I ever felt like I've got to do something to gain their approval or to gain some amount of respect or street cred or whatever you want to call it. I never felt that from my friends, and I never felt like from my coaches. I never felt like, hey, I've got to choose a certain level school to kind of validate their coaching ability, if that makes sense, right?
Oh, that's good.
So there was no pressure from that side of it, and I think a lot of it was because I was super comfortable in my own skin. I was fine. Like, if you thought I made a bad decision, okay, fine. I'm still going to make this decision, right? And I remember people looking at me, and I was a virgin until I got married, and so I was open about that. I'm saving myself for my wife, and I was very clear about that. And so I never had any problem looking somebody in the face and saying, this is my decision and I'm going with it because I've prayed about it. I've soaked it in prayer and I know what's right. And so that from that standpoint, it was easy. You know, and I've had people go, don't you know that you could have gotten, like if you went to Oklahoma and you threw for, you know, almost 13,000 yards like you did at Louisiana Tech, like you've probably been drafted in the first round. I go, well, yeah, maybe so, but I'm not looking back on that. I met my beautiful wife in college. I've got 6 awesome kids. I had a fantastic career, both in college and the NFL. I was in a draft class with Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, 3 guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. And so, I mean, that's just kind of how the cards fell for me. I'd have probably been drafted higher anyways if I was just in a normal quarterback draft class.
Right. Yeah.
But I happen to be in the class with those 3 guys. So, you know, I'm good with where God took me. I broke my wrist in 9th grade, and at my right wrist, I was making a tackle and broke my wrist. I played corner of all positions in 9th grade. And so from that moment forward, when I got back from that, I wrote a verse on my wrist tape. And Dee alluded to it a little earlier that a man's heart plans the way, but the Lord directs his steps, Proverbs 16:9. And I wrote that verse on my wrist. I wrote it since 9th grade, and I never missed a game from 9th grade to my last game as a New Orleans Saint in Atlanta in 2017 or 16, I guess it was, writing that on my wrist. And I was good with that. My heart had all kinds of plans, whether it was college or the NFL, all kinds of plans, but I was good letting God direct the steps.
That's so good.
You know, you
And
are
it
a
wasn't
true
always
testament.
easy.
You are a true
Wasn't always
testament
easy.
to it, though.
But
Yeah.
that's where I found comfort and peace.
Yeah. And then life becomes like, it is what it is at this point, right? It's like, there's so many other things that I need to focus on, and I can't be worried about what man wants me to do. I need to go where God needs me to be.
That's it. Yeah. And the sooner we get to hear a lot more or focus a lot more on what God's saying to us, the less and less we care about what anybody else thinks. Right. And just being comfortable in your own skin that way.
Yeah, I think we were literally talking about surrendering and kind of the lack of with athletes today and in our own personal lives still, you know, again, to this day, as we've been walking with Christ, there's areas where we get convicted on, I haven't surrendered that to the Lord. But we talked about like a lot of times when, you know, as image bearers, Genesis 1:27, to be reflections of Christ, we have the image of Christ, which is such an honor, and don't necessarily think I can wrap my mind around it completely. You know, we're supposed to reflect his image. And I think that when we don't surrender control in areas, what it really does is, as image bearers, we provide a distorted view to non-believers of what being a Christ follower looks like. And as a, you know, former athlete from an athletic background here, how do you think, you know, athletes struggle with that control? Because when you look at a Saturday, you're preparing for, you know, a test or a game week on a Saturday, Sunday, or Friday night. And there's no coincidence that the harder you work, you know, the more you prepare, the higher likelihood you are, you know, to succeed when the test comes, whether it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever competition you're preparing for. But we can get it confused with our walk with Christ, that we have to work hard enough to earn his acceptance, which is not true, right? We're accepted through, you know, receiving and believing him, confessing he is Lord, and through what he did at Calvary. But we're still supposed to work hard, Colossians 3:23. But what's the fine line between that, specifically, that athletes struggle with, do you think?
Yeah, the result, right? The result. It's what because, you know, I go out and like I work out, run hills or, you know, go to the weight room and train or whatever. Certainly not hard anymore, but just kind of keep in shape. I like to go throw the ball, whatever. And we do those things not because we want to do them. I don't necessarily want to work out. I want the result of working out. Right. I want to stay remotely fit. You know, I want my mental health and my physical health to be intact. Right. And so we put so much effort into sports and meetings, the training and whatever, because we believe that that's going to give us a certain result. Like it's going to shape a certain outcome for us.
Yeah.
And the problem that the juxtaposition for us Christians is that Jesus says, I've already taken care of the result. Like, don't worry about that part of it. I got it. There's still a way you need to walk, right? James chapter 2, there's still a level of obedience and walking by faith that proves your faith by your works, right? But the final result has nothing to do with us. And so that's a struggle for us, because we feel like if I go out and I run enough, or if I study enough tape, that it's going to give me this result. And it's quite the opposite when it comes to our walk with Jesus.
Yeah, that's so good. I think, man, it's spot on. Like,
yeah, it is.
And it can be so hard from that, right? Because to be one of the best athletes in the world, which if you're in the NFL, you are one of the best athletes in the world, whether you test well or not, you got to work pretty dang hard.
Yeah.
And that, like, it's just such a fine line for a lot of guys. And I know I struggled with it early on when I was in college as a freshman. And we were talking because I've got a lot of friends in DaVinci, a lot of guys that he has trained that are in the NFL currently. And a couple either got cut or got traded or thought they were going to make the active, but ended up on practice squad to start the year. Can you just talk about that? As you were 13 years in the NFL, which is insane. It's a long time. NFL stands for not for long, is what a lot of people say. And you made it 13 years, right?
13,
and you
wow.
Played for, I think, 5 or 6 different teams?
Yeah, 5, yep.
And early on in your career, you talked about being drafted by the Cleveland Browns. But you got traded pretty quickly in your career, correct?
Yeah, sure did.
So,
after my first season.
Can you just go into detail about, as a Christ follower, as a believer, that it's easy for, from a fan perspective to look at people in the NFL and say, you got it all made. What do you mean? But if you're not one of the top 15, 20 guys on the roster, you're really not guaranteed to even be there for the next season, even if you're on contract for 2 more years.
That's right.
Talk about the uncertainty of the NFL and how you kind of dealt with that. I kind of have an idea of what you're going to say, but through your 13-year NFL career and being a father and all these other things.
Yeah. So it was quite different than I, imagined it, right? Because I saw my NFL career through the lens of my college career, where it was like, just wait till I get on the field. I'm as good as Ben. I'm as good as Philip. I'm as good as Eli. Like, I know I got drafted in the 4th round, but just wait till I get on the field. And lo and behold, I get on the field, a Cleveland Browns team where we had, something like 18 starters, 18 of the 22 starters on injured reserve that year. So just a ridiculous, kind of injury plagued year. And so, that already wasn't going my way. The second part wasn't going my way. Is my first start as a rookie in week 12 was against the New England Patriots and Tom Brady after they just won their 2nd Super Bowl and 21st in a row game, NFL record 21 games in a row. So I was like, well, okay, but I saw it through my college experience, because my second start or my third start in college, 2 in a row were against Auburn in Auburn, and Rudy Johnson, Cadillac Williams, I think was a freshman, like just loaded with talent, and then the University of Miami, who had guys like Al Blades and Ed Reed starting at safety. Philip Buchanan at the left corner, Mike Rump at the right corner. Both those guys played in the NFL for a long time. Dan Morgan at the Mike linebacker, Jeremy Shockey at tight end. Jonathan Vilma was a freshman. DJ Williams was a freshman. Both those guys played 10 years in the league, like just loaded with, and they were my second NFL or second collegiate starter, third maybe. And so I just kind of went, okay, well, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to beat Tom Brady. That was my mentality.
I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm good. I've been here before. I'm going to go in here and light it up. And it was like 14-0 with like, we hadn't even touched the ball yet. It's already 14-0. And so, but I had reserved, in my mind, man's heart plans the way and the Lord directs his steps, right? God, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to go out and I'm going to give it everything I got. I'm going to give it everything I got. And then I'm going to be okay. No matter what the result is, I'm going to be okay because a man's heart plans the way, but the Lord directs his step. And that became a life verse for me throughout my NFL career because Butch Davis resigned week 12. Randy Lerner hires, a new head coach, new GM. That offseason, they draft Charlie Fry in the 3rd round, who was a local kid. And I promptly get traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so it was like, well, this is not what I at all expected. But, and in hindsight, it's the way that God works. I signed a 5-year contract. This was pretty unconventional for a 4th-round rookie at that point in the NFL. But I signed a 5-year contract. Cleveland Browns were making everybody sign 5-year contracts. And we kind of held off for as long as we could. And I finally said, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back into the draft. Like, I'm going to just sit out a whole year of football? No, so we signed it. And it was all good. And, again, in my head, I was like, I'm going to get on the field and I'm going to play well enough. We'll rip this deal up in 2 years and get a new one. Mm-hmm. Well, I get traded. And so I'm in Tampa. And I'm in Tampa this 2006 or 2005 now. And Brian Greasy and Chris Sims and myself. And Brian tears his ACL. Chris Sims goes in and plays. Chris plays really well. Takes to the wild card game in the playoffs. We get beat by the Redskins. Mark Brunell and the Redskins. 2006 comes around, and man, I'm humming. I'm on all cylinders. I've got John Gruden's offense down to a T. The West Coast offense fits my style of play with rhythm and timing and getting the ball out. And I'm rolling. So it's Chris, and then it's me, and like I'm ready to go. It's year 3, right? And so the last practice of OTAs, like June 19th, the last period of the last practice, the last play of the last period of the last practice, I scramble out of the pocket. Derek Brooks is chasing me from the inside, and I plant to cut back, and I bust my ACL. And it's like, man, and God is good through it, and I heal quickly and come back, and I'm back. They put me on. I healed so quickly they didn't put me on injured reserve, even though I tore it right before training camp. They put me on the PUPs list, and I came back later that season, and I didn't play any, but I was a 3rd quarterback on the roster, whatever. But I started going back looking at, like, after that season was over, had I signed a 3-year contract in Cleveland like I wanted to, coming off an ACL, and a league that watched my 4 starts as a rookie on a bad team as a bad player, I would have had no value at all in the NFL. There would have been no reason for the Bucs to bring me back. I would have been out of a contract, probably out of a job, probably out of the league. That might have been the end of the story. But God had me sign a 5-year contract, so I was under contract. Whether the Bucs wanted me to be under contract or not, they could have released me. Certainly could have released me, but they had seen what I'd done through OTAs in the spring and all that stuff. Well, let's just see how he heals. Let's see if he comes back. And so they didn't have any reason just to kick me to the curb. They could at least watch me heal and recover, and God was faithful through that. But had I signed the 3-year contract, I'd have probably been released at the end of that year. And it would have worked just quite the opposite. So I learned early on in my NFL career that, like, a man's heart plans the way, but the Lord directs his steps is a very real thing, because I had planned on a 3-year contract, just like my brother signed 2 years before when he got drafted by the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted it to look like, because he got to 3rd year and had played a little bit and then got re-upped. So I was like, well, that makes, I want to do that. And the Browns were like, no, we're going to sign a 5-year contract. Man, I don't want to do a 5-year. That's not my plan. That's not how I want to do it.
Right.
But God saw all of that, down the line. And so it's the ability to take God at his word and say, hey, I got you. Like, when God says it, why don't we believe it? Like we can read all the stories, and I believe to this day, like Moses stood in front of the Red Sea and watched those walls of water part. Like I believe that. That's
Right, right.
It's not just a childhood like Bible school thing that I like read as a cool story back then. Like I believe that happened. Like I believe Samson like pushed down the walls of a palace. Like
Right.
It's not just a Bible story that I believe. So why can I believe something so miraculous as that? But when God says, "Hey, trust me," I struggle with it.
Wow.
And so it's being able to take God at His word. And I don't mean to make that sound like that's easy. I struggle with it too.
Yeah.
But
we overcomplicate it though.
There are spaces in our lives where we find that comes easier than others. And for some reason within my career, that was easy. I was able to go, all right, God, you're moving me around. And maybe it was because He made me so confident as a young man that I was like, move me around. I trade me, get like, as soon as I get in front of somebody else, I'll throw a little bit and they'll sign me. I'm good with that. So, but I really felt like I took God at His word when I discovered Proverbs 16:9, a man's heart plans the way and the Lord directs his steps. I kind of adopted that and said, okay, I'm going to walk like that then.
That's so powerful. Well, Luke, dude, we really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I'm leaving encouraged from this conversation, and I really hope and know that a lot of people will as well. But we appreciate your time, dude, and we'll have to have you on later as well. This was awesome, and God bless you, dude. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, guys. You bet. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Seriously, man, thank you. That was
awesome.
Phenomenal.
Money made the world go round. I'm trying to get it all right now. Everybody worried about the crown being. Look, homie, I'm the man right now. Talking to a PI, kind of time we on. Jump roll like the kind of take eons. Got a little buzz, it's time to go beyond. Can't look back, no time to hit rewind. Yeah, she wants the new S class. I'm like, boo, you must ask. They pour way too much in your glass. Just move your hips